So what's next as we move into the second half of December? We're here to try to figure it all out. The weather has definitely been wintry and cold across a large portion of the country, really the central and the eastern U.S. to start off December. What will the second half of the month do as we get all the way up to the New Year's period? We're here to discuss it, get detailed. We first need to figure out a storm system that's right out ahead of us as we move towards the back half of this work week, and then we'll move after that and try to figure out what's next. My name is Mitch. Good Monday morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Subscribe if you haven't, like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please drop it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So we do got snow across the Great Lakes region, but this has been pretty much a common theme over the last several days. Lake enhanced type stuff, lake effect. And then we got a lot of moisture across the Pacific Northwest, and I do think this will be a common thing also for the foreseeable future, as we're going to have a lot of flow moving across the Pacific Northwest and the northern Rockies. The middle of the country is pretty quiet, and the southern tier of the country is quiet also. Watches, warnings, and advisories. We got a lot of alerts out across the Pacific Northwest and areas of the northern Rockies just for what's going on right now and what's to come. A lot of high wind watches, high wind warnings. We got flood watches. We got winter storm watches up for the higher elevations of like the Cascades. So there's a lot going on out there, and it's going to be very active for the foreseeable future. And then across the eastern U.S., just a lot of cold weather alerts. I mean, I can click on some of these cold weather advisories. We got lake effect snow warnings. We got winter weather advisories. Just cold across the central and especially the eastern U.S. Record-breaking cold in some areas. For example, it's 18 degrees in my location here in central South Carolina. We only get to the teens maybe a couple times a winter down here, and sometimes we don't even get that cold. Sometimes our lowest temperatures of the winter here in central South Carolina is like the low 20s. We've had a few winters where it's only gotten that cold, so it's pretty rare, pretty uncommon, I would say, to get down to the teens here in my neck of the woods. But moving forward, what is next? So if we're looking at the upper pattern here, and the blue is lower pressure, a trough, a dip in the jet, and as we're starting off for Wednesday, you're going to see this area right here kind of dip south. And as it moves south, we're going to get a storm system. It's going to start off somewhat positively tilted, then go neutrally tilted, then a bit negatively tilted. That means we have a strengthening storm system. So we're getting into Thursday morning, then we get into Thursday afternoon, evening, and then we get into Friday morning, and then it swings over the northeast. And just this little dip right here in the bluish green color that you're seeing, that is our next storm system that we are watching. This will bring a shot of cold air back down into the lower 48. After we moderate a little bit as far as temperatures, how far south will this shot of cold air get? We're still trying to kind of figure that one out. But as far as weather, timestamp is up here. You know, this is in Eastern time, so if you're in a different time zone, back it up according to your time zone that you're in. But as we're moving forward, let's click on this and make sure we're in motion. And this is around 7 p.m. Eastern time, Wednesday. You can see there is a 983 low pressure as we're waking up Thursday morning going across the basically U.S.-Canadian border. So it's pretty far north. It's cutting very far north here. So we're actually getting rain across the Midwest. Snow, you know, where it's cold enough for snow. Now, as we're moving forward, some cold air could wrap in back behind this, but you see all this green and even some yellow and orange in this. This could be some storms across areas of the eastern U.S. Now, are we going to have any kind of severe weather? I think there will be the possibility of severe weather, especially for damaging winds. When you have a low pressure cutting this far north, this does bring some better thermodynamics, severe weather ingredients further north, especially moisture like higher dew points, higher humidity. So I do want to watch kind of Thursday for a severe weather day. An outbreak? Absolutely not, but we'll watch that. And then just a big old rain bomb across areas of the eastern U.S. Just a lot of rain, and we've seen a lot of snow up here in this neck of the woods lately. But this is just going to be rain. Definitely a warmer system. 981 low. It's a very strong low pressure, but it's cutting into Canada. So it's not cutting way down here. It's cutting way up here. So this is going to bring a lot more warm air into the picture. So this is probably going to mess with a lot of people's snowpack in this region. And then we're starting to get into Friday morning, and I mean, this could be a wind. This is definitely kind of a windy look in my opinion. We're probably going to get a lot of strong winds associated with this in New England, the Northeast, and then it moves on off. Now, if we take a look at what the GFS is showing with this, same thing, we'll start off around Wednesday midday. It's a little bit colder, and I think it's just because it has this low pressure moving a little bit further south, and it's not as strong. We got some snow, nothing to write home about, not a big storyline at all across northern areas of Minnesota, North Dakota, and we continue to move forward here, and we're getting into Thursday midday, but you can see kind of the darker greens, the yellows down here showing up across areas of the Midwest, starting to move into the Mid-South. I think we could get some thunderstorms. Thursday should be the day, but we got low pressure further south, so we got some back-end snow like in Milwaukee, back into Chicago as we're getting into, say, Thursday afternoon, snow up here into the UP of Michigan. The Euro is much warmer with this. And then we continue to move forward, and we get into Friday morning. Looks like we got rain switching to some snow across the Ohio Valley areas of western PA, maybe as far south as West Virginia. And this is just a lot of heavy rain moving up the I-95 corridor for Friday morning. Could generate a lot of winds too. And then we got to figure out what's next after that. We'll discuss that a little bit as we go. But as far as that severe weather threat, we're going to start us off Wednesday afternoon. You can see, some dew points creeping into the 50s, even some 60s. Once you start to get these dew points in the 60s, that's definitely a good enough ingredient for severe weather for this time of the year, for December standards, especially when you normally have more in the way of kinematics this time of the year over thermodynamics, which is your better moisture levels at the surface. So we continue to move forward here. If we can get this in motion, and pivotal weather can be a little finicky when you don't show enough tension for certain time periods. And basically when I'm loading up these tabs, and this kind of tab has to sit there too long, when I finally get to it, it just lags a little bit. But we're getting into Thursday afternoon. As we're getting there, if we can get there, and we're getting in, Thursday afternoon here, you can see kind of this push of moisture all the way up into Indiana, Ohio. Now, dew points in the 40s and 50s probably won't get the job done up here, but you can see this pool of moisture down here across the deep south. Dew points in the 60s. If we can have some higher CAPE levels, storm fuel, and good enough kinematics, then we could have some overlapping ingredients that could support some severe weather down here across the deep south for Thursday, maybe into the mid-south. Where's the best overlapping ingredients going to be? We continue to try to figure that one out as we go. No need in just like overly analyzing this or getting overly detailed. We'll figure it out here in the coming days. Now, the snow with this storm system, not much. And just this is between now and basically the next week. Okay, we're going to get a lot of heavy snow in the northern Rockies, areas of the central Rockies, but really the northern areas and the Cascades are finally going to get a lot of snow over the next week. But once you get into the central and eastern U.S., most of the snow is kind of just anchored up here into the north, and there is nothing for the middle of the country in the south. So no big signal at all moving forward. I do think this will bring a shot of cold air starting it off Thursday morning. Most of the country is dealing with above average temperatures. We begin to warm up after this cold blast we're experiencing this morning across the eastern U.S. over the next couple of days, but a little bit of lingering cold air still in place as we're getting in Thursday morning. But then you can see a shot of cold air that digs down, the blues, the greens, even the Barney colors. This is below average temperatures, so kind of a reinforcing shot of cold air that kind of dips down, maybe kind of teases all the way down to the deep south as we're getting into Friday afternoon and sweeps across the eastern U.S. and then it moderates, and we could have another shot of cold air after that, but we'll try to figure that one out as we go. I think it's very important before we go further to mention we need to keep things about 7 days out ahead of us. Now, I am going to discuss past 7 days, but I do want to mention that a lot of this could change. And speaking of the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, most of the country is dealing with above average temperatures. Now, this is the percent chance to see above average temperatures. So that could be a few degrees above average. Please don't look at this and think immediately it's going to be 80, 85 degrees. Now, for some areas, we're going to get it well into the 70s across the deep south. But if you notice, still dealing with near normal to below average temperature chances across the extreme northern sections of the country. As you guys are kind of stuck out into kind of the mainstream of things where some cold air can kind of penetrate further south in these regions. Now, if you look at the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, looks active. We'll just call it that across the western sections of the country. The middle sections looks like it's drying out and around near normal to leaning towards slightly below average precipitation chances across areas of the eastern U.S. We look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. It doesn't look much different. This is running basically between the Christmas time period, the 22nd to the 28th of December. Unfortunately, it does look like white Christmas chances are pretty low unless you have just lingering snowpack on the ground from what we've dealt with over the last few days or so. But we can still get winter weather in this pattern. I know that's hard to believe. I'm not talking about for areas to the south. I think we're cooked down here. But just because you have above average temperatures for areas to the north, that is still cold enough for winter weather. And look at the Northeast, still hanging out with below average temperature chances. So, and this is precipitation chances, what it looks like here. All right, so if we look at the pattern as a whole, I want you to look at the blues and the kind of the greens embedded in the blues as colder temperatures, our cold air source. And then you see the yellows and the oranges and even the reds on your screen. This is above average temperatures. And that's not always the way you should look at this, okay? Because this is the pattern at 18,000 feet. Okay, this is where we're looking at where the trough is, where a ridge is. But in this case, focus on cold air source. So as we move past that storm system we just discussed and the cold shot of air that follows, as we're getting into this coming weekend, this is Saturday, all of our cold air is pretty much just hanging out across Canada. Okay, now some of it, the main jet is kind of sagging down across the northern states of the lower 48. So we're going to get cold air penetrating even down here across the northern Rockies and the north central U.S. and the upper Midwest. And as we move forward here, it looks more of the same. Most of the cold air is just hanging out here in Canada, right here. We're going to get what we call a negative PNA, basically troughing out west and over western areas of Canada that sets up and just might begin to cool us down across areas of the Pacific Northwest as a trough begins to set up. Okay, and we continue to move all the way into about next week. We're getting closer to Christmas Eve, all the way into Christmas Day. Just a big ridge is looking to be in place across the lower 48. The only area that is getting a trough is areas of the Northeast, okay, and areas of the western U.S. But we got a ridge spiking over the middle of the country, and this will warm up the majority of the country, and all of our cold air is still bottled up in Canada. So, and we push this all the way past Christmas, and it looks more of the same, okay? It looks like the ridge isn't quite as strong as we get further out past Christmas, but that is just because everything gets a little bit more fuzzy the further out we get, so confidence decreases one way or the other. So we take it back to this time frame. One thing that I will mention that is good news for winter weather fans, cold weather fans, and this is, next Sunday. The cold air source, basically where our cold air has to come from, which is Canada, down to the lower 48, whether that's here, whether that's there, whether that's there, remains very, very cold and just downright Arctic. So it just remains very cold in this area. The bad news is we're not having anything that's really dislodging it south. Okay, now we just mentioned we're going to get a little bit of dislodgement, if you will, across the western U.S. in the medium to long range. And we're going to continue to have it across Atlantic Canada and the Northeast, but nothing really penetrating down into here, into the eastern U.S. And that is because we need ridging to really set up. Like, we need this like yellow to orange color to really set up and move all the way up in here. So we need a ridge to really spike here. This will bring down cold air across the central to the eastern U.S. Now, we are getting some ridging over Alaska and some ridging over areas of the Pacific. We call that a negative EPO, a negative East Pacific oscillation, and then you got the negative WPO, all these oscillations with it, which is West Pacific oscillation, and we definitely got that. We got some ridging trying to nudge into Alaska. This is going to dislodge some cold air, but it just dislodges it kind of over, it continues to put it over the western areas of Canada, and then it'll eventually make it come all the way down here. But we don't have substantial blocking up in Greenland. We call that a negative NAO to really help dislodge more cold air down here. And we don't have much of a negative AO either, and that would help basically put more blocking up in the higher latitudes, which would help dislodge basically all this blue and green you see further south. So we basically need something to really make this cold air drop south. And we're just not seeing that. So the thing that we're going to struggle to see, though, for example, you see this little area right here that drops south? This is the storm system we just talked about with the cold air that kind of follows behind it very briefly for a few days. If we go back like 4 or 5 days ago, we weren't seeing this, okay? But it trended to a more aggressive drop of cold air and basically dropping the jet. So are we going to have more of that? Is the model's going to struggle kind of showing more kind of dislodgements of this cold air further south here and there and anywhere, right? I mean, we got a lot of cold air here. I think models are going to struggle with it. But for the meantime, this is basically the 10-day ensemble mean for temperatures, whether they're average or whether they're below average or above average, between, this is the 18th through the 28th. And you can tell that for the most part, the lower 48 is above average temperature-wise outside of some of the northern states in the Northeast. And then you can see, just like what we just showed you, blue here, bluish, greenish, Barney color, right? All of our cold air is bottled up in Canada. We need something to dislodge this. So, and because our pattern looks so zonal, I mean, this is a zonal look. This means that all of our flow is just pretty much just going like that. Okay? All of our cold air is up here and the jet is so zonal. I mean, our storm systems are pretty much going to go zonal until we get like closer to Christmas where it actually looks like everything just kind of goes like this. Whoop, and then like that. So down here stays pretty dry. Okay, and a lot of flow. And that's why they've been talking about this atmospheric river across areas of the western U.S. for the foreseeable future, is because as a bit of some troughing, a dip in the jet sets up over the western U.S., we're going to have a lot of energy that rides the base of that trough and then screams up in here into Canada, then down into the Northeast. So our main kind of avenue of storm systems is probably going to be right up into here as we move over the next, I think as we move past the 5 to 7 day period and get closer to Christmas. That could change. So, and I'm just not seeing anything. For example, if we look at the Euro and we move kind of into the later portion of this weekend, all the way up into Christmas week, I'm not seeing anything. I mean, it reflects exactly what I just showed you. The middle of the country is pretty quiet, and you can see a lot of energy moving into the western U.S., and you're going to see it. A lot of energy is just going to kind of do like that. Okay, and we keep this moving, and we're between day 7 and day 10. We're the 24th, we're to the 25th, Christmas, 26th, 27th, 28th. You're just not seeing a whole lot of anything. You can see some clippers moving into the Northeast. You can see some moisture out west, but that's about it. So, hope that makes sense. Today's weather, the Southeast, and not a whole lot going on. It's just cold. I mean, it's all the way down to 17 degrees in my house now, the time I'm making this video. Southeast just looks quiet, cold. We got some moisture across southern areas of Florida, but not a whole lot going on today. Northeast, some flurries, some light snow will enter areas of the southern sections of the Northeast, maybe as far south as the northern areas of the Mid-Atlantic. But outside of that, that's about it. And then the middle of the country, the south central U.S., it's quiet. Nothing to speak on whatsoever. And then the north central U.S., some lake effect stuff will taper off as we move into the afternoon, and it'll just remain cold. Maybe an area of freezing rain screams across areas in North Dakota into the northern sections of Minnesota. And that's about it. And then the western U.S., we just got a lot of moisture. Not super active today, but that'll change as we move deeper into the week. But we do got some moisture out there. Temperatures, what we're looking at, the eastern U.S., very, very cold today, well below average temperature-wise, even down to Florida. Some areas across the south won't get out the 30s. And then this is the western U.S., certainly warmer, but that'll change over the next several days. It'll cool off down here or over here as we move forward. So that's all I got. You know, I'm glad to be back. I'm still struggling to do these videos. I was thinking the vacation would help me with that, but I'm feeling a little sick this morning. My youngest girl got sick about halfway through the vacation, and that was a real big bummer. But back, hopefully we can get the flow back going and get in routine of things once again. And yeah, we just got to figure out what's next going forward. Appreciate the support, guys. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful week. Stay warm out there, and we'll talk again soon.